I'd like to call this meeting of the St. Andrews Task Force to order. First thing we have on the agenda this evening is public comment. I'd ask if you do have a question or a comment that you raise your hand, you'll be called on, and I'll ask that you stand and identify yourself. All right. We'll move on to reports then. First thing under reports is Representative McDonald.
Okay, so the group that I'm heading up that we call the Community Hospital Group, I think we may be slightly changing our name to, this is unofficial, but the Plan B Group, because it's becoming a little more clear that a community hospital model might only be one model of how we move forward. It is possible that another private form of organization might also work. So we're going to look at both of those as we go down the road, both the community hospital model, which I've been spending some time looking at, and also something that might be an alternative 501c3 model. The governance isn't as important, I think, as an economic analysis that we want to do. We're undertaking an economic analysis of the community, the situation, our health needs, and whether or not an alternative plan can exist that would see an emergency room continuing and St. Andrews continuing as a hospital with a set of services around that emergency room. So we're undertaking that economic analysis as we speak, and we're getting some help from people who are experts in the field. However, I have to say that we're getting help pro bono at the moment, and I see, in other words, they're volunteering their time, and I see an issue, a big issue that we need, if people believe in the possibility, and I ask that you do believe in that possibility. That's what we're all about, is the possibility that there can be a hospital here with an emergency room and with a small set of services around it that's appropriate to our health needs. If you believe that, if we believe it, we're going to need probably a little more than pro bono expertise, both on the legal side and on the hospital economic side, to really bolster our case that this is true. Right now we believe it's true, but we've got a lot of work to do. I would say finally, so we're continuing on. We're going to be meeting next Monday, next Monday instead of Tuesday morning. We're meeting next Monday from 4 to 5 here, and Peggy Pinkham will be talking about critical access hospitals and giving us her knowledge about what that means, because we will want to, if we go forward with anything, we will want to retain, the hospital needs to retain its critical access designation for all sorts of good reasons. And Peggy will be talking about that to the group, so we understand that as fully as possible. So we're a little concerned as a group. It's not our charter to publicize, to be out there publicizing to the public. It's not our charter to be raising funds. We're looking at these alternatives. But the group expressed a concern that we need to continue to try to win over the hearts and minds of people, because I think there's a strong possibility that the voices of Lincoln County Healthcare, which have been the expert voices in this whole debate, may convince some people that our alternative isn't really workable. We don't know that yet. We're not 100%. We don't know that we can succeed, but we believe the only way to go forward is to think that we can and take a detailed look at it. And if we get stymied in our tracks because we don't have money and we don't have help, then we will not get anywhere. So we're concerned that we keep up a kind of momentum among the public, in the public, that there is a possibility for a different vision for this hospital. If we lose the hearts and minds of the people, I think then we may have a much harder time doing it. So make a plea to the task force and to all of us to stay positive and not, get mired down in, oh my God, and there's no other way to do this, and just accept it. We're of the view that we don't need to do that until we can prove it in black and white that it can't be done. So anyway, that's the report from our group.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bruce.
Okay.
Next under reports, information requests. Jim?
The first thing I put in front of you is the list of the Lincoln County Healthcare Board of Trustees. I did have that last week. I wasn't aware that in the body of the email it specified who wasn't members of the Board of Trustees out of that group, but I've highlighted it now and we're going to put in with the information. So the fact that we do have all the names of the Lincoln County Healthcare Board of Trustees is available. We did have it last week. I apologize for any confusion there. I didn't see it in the body of the email. Additionally, the last piece of information that we've asked for from Lincoln County Healthcare had to do with structure documents, their organizational structure documents, and we've got some correspondence with Stacy earlier today that Lincoln County Healthcare doesn't anticipate providing that information. So we'll go by other means to try to attempt to get that information. I think it's pertinent and important.
Is it public information as far as we know?
Well, I will have to consult with our lawyer on how we're going to get it, but I think we can. I think we can at least get the charter documents. I don't know about bylaws.
Yeah.
Any insight to why that information was determined not available?
Yes, I think I said in the email. Do you want me to scan?
Please.
That'd be lovely.
Stacy Miller, Vice President of Physician Services for Lincoln County Healthcare. We are very interested in providing any and all information with respect to the decisions that were made and how we got to those decisions. We understand that you're interested in understanding who makes up the board, what their voting rights are, all those things that are spelled out in the bylaws. We, as senior management, are not here to educate you on that. We think that is much better served through legal counsel. So we are completely prepared to talk to you about the recommendations that we made, the changes that the board approved, but not our corporate structure. But your legal counsel could ask our legal counsel and they could have that conversation.
Can I make a comment on that?
I'd make a motion that we have Jim contact our legal counsel and ask for what we've asked for.
Amen.
Chuck?
Yes.
Just a comment.
Bruce?
Every so often in the Maine State Legislature, a bill is introduced to make the bylaws of these kinds of institutions public, and they've been defeated every time. So I think by law, Stacy is correct. They are not public. They're part of the private business of a private corporation. They've been defeated every time the Maine Hospital Association is dead set against allowing bylaws of their member organizations to be public. But it's a problem because, there's all kinds of public money involved, there's public good, the public good is involved, public health is involved. So I don't know whether there'll be another effort this year or whether, as your representative, if I am reelected, that I should make that effort. But anyway, I'm letting you know that a bill comes up almost every year and it almost every year gets defeated. Am I right about that, Stacy?
I'm not sure, Bruce,
Yeah.
honestly.
But I'm pretty sure that we look at a bill every year and it never even gets out of committee. And I think MHA is pretty powerful and doesn't want it to get out of committee.
Right. The charter documents and the articles of incorporation, I think we could get that relatively easy, but it's not going to teach us anything. It's going to be information. So really what we were trying to get was the bylaws to understand how the organization is structured. So how does a vote come to fruition?
Right. The 4 people that are listed here as being on the trustees, but then are listed as not, what is?
I'm not sure. Cindy sent me that information to you.
Bill Carrion, Miriam Wade, James Donovan, and Karen Killer?
Karen Fuller. Philip.
So,
So I know two of them are auxiliary members, so
Okay.
one is a St. Andrews auxiliary member, one is a Mass
All right.
Memorial Hospital League. And I do not believe, although I'm not positive of this, I don't believe they have voting rights.
Right.
Jim Donovan, CEO,
Right.
don't believe he has voting rights.
Okay.
And Bill Karen, CEO of Maine Health, I don't believe he has voting rights. But
All right.
is that what she said in
That's-
the email?
just curious.
I'm not positive.
It says not official vote,
Right.
but it doesn't say what, I mean, we know Jim Donovan, Bill Karen, but we don't know the other.
Yeah, the other two are auxiliary members. Yep.
So even with the information that Bruce just gave us, do we still want to move forward with asking
I think
JC
we
for the,
should at least,
Because that's not even gonna be a possibility till January.
well, that's if you put to bill forward, but if we have our legal counsel ask their legal counsel for their bylaws and articles of incorporation.
We have local lawyers that may be able to help us bridge that communication with Lincoln County Healthcare. I'm trying to obtain this. We can ask the Tom Taverners and if they'd like to help us with that, which would be more inexpensive and still keep the communication that we want those documents, if that's what the task force wants to do.
And I
Tom-
can give you the name of Don Quigley at Maine Health.
Can you please speak up so we can hear you in the back?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Tom Taverner actually called me before the meeting, said he wanted to be here, had cataract surgery, so he wasn't able to be here. But I think that he would be a bulldog on this type of issue.
I like our chances for that.
At least to keep the conversation is trying to obtain those documents, whether we can get them or not. We can have our legal counsel, we can have Tom act as legal counsel for the town if the price is right.
So that'll be our step one.
Yeah,
Start with
I can
him.
work on that.
Okay.
If Tom says we can't do it, then I'll come back to the task force.
No problem.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other information requests outstanding?
That's everything. I mean, I think we've received a lot of information from Lincoln County Healthcare, and then the public has done a really good job of, if they come across some information that they think is helpful, they've dropped it off to us. I've just started utilizing Peggy to her greatest ability and getting that information out here, and they're organizing it. I do some more stuff out there later today after business closed. But still, if the public wants to do some more of their research, they find some information that they think is useful to the task force, get it to me, get it to Peggy, and we'll organize it so the appropriate group can look at it. But as far as information requests, everything we've requested has either been received or we've got an answer for.
Fair enough.
All right. Thanks, Jim. Next under reports, the volunteer coordinator, Peggy.
We are blessed to live in one of the best communities in the entire world.
Amen.
From the smallest effort to the largest effort, it has been an incredible experience to sit here. First of all, let me thank Channel 7 for all of you who cannot access the internet. We now have the complete season, so far, of St. Andrews Hospital Task Force on video, and we have a player. So if you would like to come into the town office and see any of the meetings or Dr. Foray's interview, they are here. The nice thing about this is you can fast forward through those parts that you think you've already seen. If you don't have a computer, which I know a lot of you don't because I hand out a lot of these sheets every week because I don't have an email for you, come in. We are here Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 2 to 4, and I'm sure that if you want to make other arrangements, that Jim would be happy to let you sit in another room someplace and look at these on the little machine. It's simple. You just plug it in, put the DVD in, and watch the interviews. This week, I have a new volunteer list. If you are not on our mailing list and you have an email address and you want to be on our mailing list, you don't have to sign up for a work group. You can sign up for a work group, that would be great. And I'm gonna make a plea for the fundraising work group. We need leadership and we need a plan immediately, if not sooner. I'm also gonna make a plea to our task force to ask for a weekly amount from our community that needs to be raised so that we can see that we are making some progress, because there are lots of people who want to give, but they don't know what enough this week is. So I'm gonna make that plea. I don't know where that needs to be, if it's a motion someplace, but that plea. But please, before you leave tonight, if you're not on the mailing list, if you are not getting updates, then please sign up and make sure I have your personal information. Then, in that same regard, today we send out our first volunteer weekly update. For those of you who did not get it through your email, I have some printed out versions. As you can see, what's here, it lists last week's goals and what the results were, and this week's goals. We are still continuing this week to look for volunteer leadership recruitment. We are still working as a clearinghouse for matching questions and answers. And I want to direct your attention to the chart on the wall. A lot of the questions have been redirected. And these are not all of the questions. There are other questions that will be added hopefully this week, sorted by work group. So if you are interested in fundraising and you want to see what questions are for fundraising, you can go down and find work group fundraising to see what questions are there. And that's just an example. But address yourselves to what's on the wall. We continue to collect and archive meeting agendas and notes. So if you are holding meetings and you want it to be public information, bring in the hard copy. John Pankowitz has also offered to make anything and everything we have in hard copy here available through the Google group. And that's listed on our weekly update, so you will know you can find it there, and he will let us know as soon as he has put those things on the Google group that they're there. And then, oh gosh, we're back to fundraising. So I hope that we do address that tonight. And it's would be very interesting. I think some of the responses and emails that I've had responding to feelings about Dr. Forey's interview, if you would be so wonderful as to write those down so we can put them into the communications folder. I have 2 reviews of that interview, and I'm happy to talk to anybody after the meeting about just general comments about what that meant to individuals and to the community. Probably not worth taking time in the meeting today, but please volunteer and think about fundraising. Write a check. Jim can tell you who to make it out to and all of those wonderful things. So sign up. I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. Next under reports, Hooper Region Ambulance Service Work Group.
I haven't prepped Scott. I didn't tell him I'd even be on the agenda. And I know you haven't met since our last meeting with Lincoln County Healthcare, but I was kind of hoping that maybe you could bring light to any activity that you've had, whether just working on your budget for...
We have a preliminary impact to what our budget will be, and that's for...
Why don't you come right up here, brother?
Scott, your title is Group Region Ambulance Service
Operations Manager.
Operations
Yep,
Manager.
and Rob Ham, the service chief, is here as well, so if he has any opportunity to answer questions as well. We've pretty much outlined an initial impact to what a 12-month budget would be. Obviously, this is going to happen in the last quarter of our budget, so that it would be a fourth of this. But the initial impact to our budget, we're anticipating about a $300,000 impact. That is attributed to 500 call volume reduction. That's the amount of calls that we're doing out of the emergency room now that we're transporting to other facilities. So that'll be a net loss of revenue of $200,000. And we're looking at about $100,000, $105,000 to be exact, of payroll costs as we have to staff differently than what we're doing now, is our transport time is going to be longer. The average transport time that we are anticipating is about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes from the turnaround time from when we get the call until we're back in service in the community. Our average mileage that we had previous to the change is about 8 miles. It's now going to be 18 miles, transport time up to miles, so a total mileage of 41 miles round trip to bring an ambulance back into the community. So obviously that's going to impact fuel costs, it's going to impact the life cycle of the ambulances. We are budgeting now on a 7-year cycle. We're going to have to change that and reduce the life cycle of the ambulances. So that'll have another impact to what we have for budget requirements in the ambulance. So that's the direct impact. Obviously, there'll be some offset. The mileage will increase, so there'll be a slight offset in mileage revenue, about $75 a call. But again, that's offset by the $200,000 loss. There is some possibility that we'll do transfer work out of Miles to other facilities, but we're not sure exactly how many calls that's going to represent. And Lincoln County Healthcare is trying to get us data from their perspective as to how many Lincoln County residents, Booth Bay Harbor residents, Booth Bay and Southport, that we transport in end up being transported out from Miles. So that we're waiting on, and that will help us kind of refine those numbers. Probably one of the biggest concerns policy-wise that we're going to have to deal with is just being out in the community. We have a lot of requests for people that are expecting us to now transport them to Midcoast Hospital rather than someplace else. And that brings a couple different scenarios to play. The first is whether it's clinically appropriate, because it's a much further now. Instead of 18 miles, now we're talking 26 miles. So that's an additional amount of contact time that we have with patients, and is that safe for the person that we have? The second implication is, do we have enough resources in town to manage a person for an extra half hour, 45 minutes to get to Brunswick and back, and keep town with less coverage than going to Miles. So going to Midcoast, as a lot of requested as we kind of work our way through the community, may not be as frequent an option as people are expecting of us. So that's going to be another discussion that we need to have. So those are some of the things that we're up against, and we're working through them. And Lincoln County Healthcare has provided us with some resources, and we're still gathering some more information on what the impact is going to be.
Scott, the $300,000 that you were talking about with the reduction in revenue plus the increase in cost, does that include new equipment as well as updated training?
Not yet. When we had initial talks with Lincoln County Healthcare, there are some training opportunities that they might be able to provide for us. There's some grant funding that we might be able to get, and we've also funded a training program in our regular operating budget that can handle some of these changes. But it definitely will impact as we move forward, particularly in new training for new licensees. Obviously, we're going to need more personnel.
I was just gonna go there.
The pool of licensed personnel in the region is finite, and most licensed personnel work in other services, so it's not as easy as putting out an ad and saying, come work for us, because we're competing with CLC and Wiscasset and Walden. We're all trying to get those same licensed people to work for us. To meet that need, we're going to have to train more staff.
So this impact number in no way, shape, or form regards purchasing like another ambulance?
Correct, right.
It has nothing to do with
Right.
bringing on more personnel.
Right.
This is,
This is the
so
$105,000.
this is a brass,
Yeah,
I mean, a bare bottom.
right. It
Impact.
doesn't include any fuel costs, maintenance costs. There is in that $105,000 by adding additional personnel. What we
Right.
are relying on now is in the community now, there are people that can leave their job temporarily while
Right.
we get busy. That's probably not going to be the case, because a call can be done in about half hour, 45 minutes.
Right.
Now it's closer to 2 hours, so the employer is less likely, people are
Absolutely.
less likely to be able to do that. So we're going to have to change how we staff, and like the rest of Maine, the country, rely less on volunteers and more on paid staff.
The training that you get right now, that's all through state programs, right?
Yeah, it's through the community college system, and they made a change probably about 10 or 15 years ago that instead of just a licensure class, it's now college credit. So you pay college credit costs for that. So an EMT class is now in the $400 range, and intermediate classes in the $1,500 range. And when you get to the paramedic level, that's a $5,000 class. So it's, you know, it is expensive, and it's something that we're working with all the people involved to see if there's a way that we can fund that without going back to the town again to try to do it that way.
Currently, how many paramedics do we have at our?
We have 7.
Hmm.
There are 2 that are in town. There are a couple of us that are a few towns over, and then the rest are pulled away from like Augusta, Winthrop, that area that we pull in, Gardner.
Just so people understand what they were talking about before, the capital program. So when you replace an ambulance, that's been done through fundraising in the past.
Right.
It's not part of your request to the towns. It's not part of your actual operating budget.
In the last couple of years, we have started a capital improvement program, and we've set aside a smaller portion than to fully fund the program of our regular budget to start to build a capital improvement program as it should be. That was prior to this. What we have done is we did maintain a fleet of 3 ambulances, and we had an opportunity to buy an ambulance recently with some short-term funding ahead of fundraising that we're working on now. And rather than try to get a small amount of money from the salvage value of the third ambulance, we kept it. And we're going to, as the budget this year kind of unfolds, and if we have the money, we are going to staff it with enough personnel and equipment to keep it in service so that we will have 4 ambulances. For example, right now we have one that's out for repair, which would normally have brought us down to 2 ambulances. Because we kept that, we were able to put the reserve ambulance in service, stock it, license it, so now we back up to 3 ambulances. Prior to the hospital making this announcement, a 2 ambulance system with a third as a backup was adequate. Now we're going to have 3 ambulances, or the 4th one is kind of a reserve to pull in as needed.
And do you think that's enough?
I think right now, yes. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns right now.
That's for sure.
That's one of them. It all depends, you know, whether the general public decides to not use the urgent care center, or whether they decide that they don't want to drive, they want to have the ambulance. All those impacts are unknown.
Absolutely.
There's going to be some history before we can figure out what the true nature of this is going to be. There are people now that don't call 911, they go to the emergency room at St. Andrews. And that's probably going to change. And we just don't know how many that's going to represent.
What's your current call volume?
We're doing about 1,400 calls a year. And that includes all the transfer work we do. It includes the emergency 911 stuff. So it's all in there. It's about 60-40. We did have a pretty large increase when the acute care floor shut down and we took a lot of patients over to Miles. That's when we really had a huge problem in the call volume. We staffed accordingly, and has also helped us meet some of the emergency needs in the community by relying on, which is what most services are doing now. They're using the revenue that they receive for transfer work to offset the more expensive emergency side.
I have a question. How much is left in your fundraising effort for paying off the 4th?
Our goal is $175,000. The ambulance was $155,000, and we're looking to add a defibrillator. That's about $25,000 to $30,000. And our current balance of what we fundraised this summer with the softball game is about $25,000. So we're 150 short of our goal, but it's an ongoing project. We have some people in town and some groups that want to talk to us about helping us out, and we're working on it.
I have a question, probably more Robbie question. You guys feel like you're going to be prepared for April 1st? I mean,
Yeah, I think we're gonna be prepared. What we're doing now is all the preliminary, build up to that, training, equipment. So it's, there's been the support, there's been support offered by different local organizations. So I think that by April, we'll have, the fourth vehicle in service as a BLS truck, for backup and those times when we need 4. There's times now that we have 3 out at different occasions, so I'm sure that when we start changing our turnaround time to an hour and a half plus, that there'll be times that we'll have 4 out. And I think at the moment, we've got people on staff that are looking for more hours. The big change for us is gonna be the night call pay. We operate on an on-call basis at night. A lot of our people that work the nights have a full-time job like myself that they're going to the next morning. That's another thing that's not really gonna be feasible when these calls start turning into 2+ hours, is you're not gonna be able to be out all night and then go to your job the next day. So that's one of the bigger hits on staffing that we're gonna take, because we're gonna have to put some full-time paid people at night, which we don't have now. We all work for a call stipend and then we get paid if we go out. So that's one of our big budget savings areas right now that's gonna be changing. So I think that's probably where a majority of the money that Scott's talking about for additional crews is coming from, is the fact that we're gonna go from a call stipend to a full-time paid crew at night. And like Scott said about the change with the acute care and the transfers that we picked up, that allowed us to get the service to another level with staffing and crews and response times. And I think that if this transition takes place, we'll get to another level. The beginning parts of it are going to be more costly, and as the transfer volume gets figured out and we see where it's going to be, it may settle out, but it's a huge unknown. We don't know what the call volume is going to be, like Scott said. How many people that would normally drive themselves to the ER are going to call 911? That's going to be a big factor. And part of that factor is, depending on that, we don't know how many transfers that we'll be able to do out of Miles. If the emergency volume goes way up because of the change in the local health care, we may not be available for a lot of transfers from Damascotta to Main Med or Damascotta to wherever. So it's, we're looking at some of the worst case scenarios and hoping that when the transition takes place, that it's a little bit smoother.
If you were to do a transfer from Miles to Mid-Coast, so you'd have to leave from base here, go to Miles, and then go to Mid-Coast.
We do a few of those now. We've been transferring a few of the local residents that have gone to Miles and then need to go somewhere else. So we do a few. And the other part of it is if you look at healthcare in the whole county, Wiscasset's a small service. They're primarily 100% volunteer. They have limited resources. CLC is, I think they run 5 or 6 ambulances, but they cover a huge area of the county. I'm not sure if they have a lot of capacity. So I think in the long run that everybody's going to have some slight changes to make to be able to cover what needs to be covered.
Scott, so I'm rounding your number, $300,000 gap. If there wasn't a third party, if Lincoln County Healthcare didn't participate, or there wasn't another group, that's going to be asked for from the municipalities.
That would have to be made up in the local subsidy. That's nothing that the revenue side would be able to absorb. Yeah.
In regular terms, we're talking about taxes, right?
Yes.
Got it.
Yep.
There'd be an increase, make up the difference.
Correct. Yep. There'd be participation from the towns. That would have to be tax dollars rather than the revenue side, which is what we've been doing now.
And that's an estimated annual ongoing.
Correct. And then again, that's a variable. We don't, we're kind of trying not to go far outside the box with worst case scenario, but that's ballpark, yes.
Do you know what that split is off the top of your head? I mean, I can't remember what the Buffet Harbor split is.
Wasn't it? I think you and I talked about it the other day here. The impact is only another 30 or 40, I think.
but we'll research it anyway. I'm sorry. I apologize putting Scott on the spot. That's pretty impressive that he was able to spit that all off the top of his head.
Scott, can you clarify, if you're requested to take somebody to Midcoast instead of Miles, do you honor that?
Not necessarily, no. And for two reasons. The first is because it may be a liability to the ambulance service because someone is not stable enough. We may not be able to get medical control clearance to take someone that, for example, might be having a heart attack or acute injury that it's unsafe to take them the additional mileage. The second factor that impacts that is what do we have for resources in the community? Does it make sense to somebody that's going to need that ambulance later on down the timeline when we're in Brunswick and we could have gone to another closer hospital? So I guess the best way to say it is if the patient is stable, if there is enough resources in town, a lot of ifs, sure, there are going to be times when we can honor the request to go to Midcoast, but that's not going to be a frequent event, and it's going to be, we already have that now, and sometimes it's not well received, and it's really difficult at the time of an emergency in someone's living room at the back door of the ambulance to say, we can't take you to Midcoast because we're the only paramedic ambulance in town, and the crew that we have left in town is not paramedic. We're sorry, we have to go to the closest. And that's not something that is popular, but it's in the best interest of the community and the patient at times. So that's something that has to be factored into it because, you know, as I said, as we walk around the community and talk to people, we've heard a lot of comments about we're just going to go to Midcoast, and that's not necessarily a fallback option.
Scott, I mean, what you've just said begs the question that, you know, because medically it will make sense to take somebody to the shorter distance. It gets back to the point of, even during the day in an urgent care situation, that's you can't go there. Even though it would make perfect sense to go there, you can't go there. And unless we could get some kind of a waiver or something of that nature to I mean, even though, you know, like you're saying, you can't take somebody to Brunswick, you got to take them to Damariscotta, but we're going to drive by St. Andrews.
Well, it gets back to, and this is something that's a question for Lincoln County Healthcare, but it gets back to if we have someone that's seriously, acutely ill.
Right.
If the urgent care center isn't, if they can only, if they're only geared up for minor emergencies like simple fractures, simple cuts, sprains, they're not going to be able to handle, even if they are the closest and open and able to take an ambulance, they're not going to be able to be the place that we go to for someone that's...
I understand that completely.
So, I mean, that just brings a whole new dynamic.
I understand, I'm just trying to bring this
Yeah.
into focus for everybody of what we're talking about here.
That's another reason to save our emergency room.
That's what I'm trying to, that's the point I'm trying to get to.
Being up the river without a paddle.
Dr. Oliphant?
Yeah. Medical control, would I presume, provided for Miles?
Yes, our medical control would be, the next local medical control would be Miles.
Okay, and do you anticipate them authorizing you to take patients to Midcoast?
I don't have any reason to believe that they won't, but, you know, it's usually a dialogue that we have with the physician that's on duty, and we discuss the clinical indications as to whether they're the closest. And there's a lot of factors in place that go into that, what their resources are, whether they, for example, have ortho that's available that day. There's a lot of things that go into that decision. I'm hoping that I would anticipate that their authorization to bypass would be independent of anything that was going on with...
An honest broker.
Dan?
Can you go to Togus?
Togus is a unique situation because Togus doesn't have an emergency room per se. They have, what they do is they have, as you probably know, travel benefit, and they contract out to a local ambulance up there, which is, I think it's Delta now. And for someone that needs to be transferred non-emergent, they do send that ambulance to go pick up their patient. In the past, they used to accept emergency patients up there in their clinic. They no longer do that. It's very rare that they'll do that. So we usually try to transport to the closest hospital first, and then the travel benefit kicks in, and the ambulance that's contracted with Togus and the VA will come down and do the admission process. That's how that works now.
Lucy?
Scott, what happens if Miles waves you off because they can't take an emergency?
If we're on diversion from the
Yeah.
emergency room, then it's another dialogue that we have with the physician that's on duty. Presumably the next closest is Midcoast, so we would go there. The other two resources that we have obviously is Maine General and Augusta. There's Parkview in Brunswick, and there's also Penn Bay and Rockport. So that we kind of have a swing and an arc of the resources to go to, but that's the fallback from what their diversion is.
How often does that happen, that you're diverted?
I would have to pass that off to Lincoln County Healthcare. I know that our involvement with Miles as far as diversion, we don't interact with them very much because they're not right now our primary transport location, so I can't tell you exactly how many times. I know that there's an official diversion, there's also times when they are kind of booked, and if you call in and say, we'd like to come your way, that, would it be more appropriate to go back to St. Andrews? That used to happen with orthopedic patients before there was some orthopedic coverage. We used to do a little bit of go to Miles instead of going to St. Andrews. And there are times when that was not an option. They either didn't have orthopedic coverage or they were kind of busy in the emergency room. And we came back to St. Andrews, and that wasn't an issue. So I'm not sure what their numbers are for official declared diversions.
Freddie?
I just wanted to check. The charge of the work group for BRAS is to basically, like Robbie said, look at worst case scenario and figure out how you would handle it, correct? So by talking about this is how we would do it, this work group is not charged with trying to not make it not happen. Their job is to figure out what to do if. So I don't want public and viewers to think that we all think it's an accomplished fact and see my concern?
Absolutely, that's well put, and I think everybody needs to know that we're going forward trying to save St. Andrews. That's what we're here to do. But I think all of us recognize that if that doesn't happen for whatever reason, and Bruce's work takes forward and realizes that that's not going to be functional for whatever reason, at the end of the day, we need to do everything we can for these folks because they're going to become your emergency room.
Yeah.
If this doesn't work for whatever reason, we have to give these people state of the art. And at this point, you get no funds from any of the hospitals at any level, right? Other than
Correct.
Right. So
the funds, I guess, that we receive from the hospital are through revenue,
Right.
charges for service. So if we take one of their patients that's an inpatient,
right.
they'll pay us for that, but we don't receive any subsidy. There is some in-kind gifting with training opportunities, but as far as a direct subsidy, no.
No.
We don't receive anything right now. And it's a good point. Just like we plan for natural disasters, hurricanes, and we are planning for worst case scenario.
Right.
And that's kind of what public safety does. So that's where the mode we're in is planning for worst case and making sure that we're prepared no matter what happens.
You know, it's interesting, several times in his interview, Dr. Foray suggested that Lincoln County Health was going to have to be dropping some money your way, and that they realized that they would have to be, helping you improve service, and that the monetary consideration would be part of it. So that's interesting. He also suggested that things were going to be pretty much the same at the hospital. It's just going to be 8 in the morning till 6 at night. So I guess urgent care isn't really staying the same, is it?
Not to my understanding.
I think the emergency room would be kind of downgraded.
Right. Urgent care, from my understanding, is not going to be receiving ambulances.
Right. Well, we understand that.
And in fact, we may be responding to urgent care to take patients that are
From
not suitable for urgent care to a true emergency room.
So you won't be able to take people to urgent care, but you may pick up.
Correct.
Okay. I hadn't thought of
And
that.
I don't know how many numbers there are. I've heard some anecdotally, off the cuff, have said it may be busier because people going to urgent care expecting to get a certain level of service that's not available. It may be no impact at all. Because again, that's an unknown that we're just going to have to get some experience behind us before we can find out what it's going to do.
I have no doubt that the best emergency medical minds on the peninsula are working on this right now, but there seem to be a lot of variables, and I've expressed my concern on what is probably the only foreseeable option right now. The clear and distinct option is that the emergency room closes down, and then we have to lean very heavily on the ambulance service. That's concerning.
One of the challenges that we recognized early on, which we've always had, is that there is no one that abuts us. It's water. You know, we're on a peninsula. So other towns like Wiscasset, Waldoboro, even Garristana can pull in from
Right.
all sides if we can. So that's why when we talk about some of these staffing numbers, it's not because we see an opportunity to just throw people on shifts. It's because we're going to have to, like we have now, but in a different way, self-mutual aid. There's really no other way to do it. Otherwise, we're going to be waiting for ambulances to come down the peninsula or come over the river road. So that's kind of where it's driving some of these costs, because there is no other abutting community to pull from.
Once again, thank you, Scott. I didn't even tell him that he was going to speak to
Next under reports, Lincoln County Healthcare Transition Team.
We had a brief discussion at the end of our meeting with how the task force will assist in the transition team, and really we left it at, I don't know was the answer, I think, is where we left it at. Obviously, my time is there's not much left. So, and I know that the task force is.
I know you're sleeping at least 4 hours a night. Now, come on.
And I know the task force is spread pretty thin, especially, I mean, once a week meeting. I know Stuart Smith just came from another meeting, and I know you guys all have other meetings. So we're kind of soliciting volunteers to try to help us with the transition team, and then Stacy had asked us, what is our involvement going to be in there? And I thought that was a great discussion topic because I don't know the answer. Where is the transition team at right now? You met?
So Lincoln County Healthcare has a transition team. There are probably 8 or 9 different subgroups, anything from facilities to new services to the ambulance service. As I think we said last week, we have a standard monthly meeting with BRAS to talk about, you know, what do you think your impact is going to be, et cetera. We have a community advisory committee. I don't know, there are about 8. And so we have been meeting, we meet weekly, but have sort of said to the task force, what involvement do you want to have? What communication should we have? Should we be bridging these two efforts? We just sort of left it up to the task force. So we are fairly open for discussion, but we have an internal transition team that is meeting and preparing for the changes on April 1st.
Speaking for myself, I'm not in a big hurry, with all due respect, to help you with your transition, because I still would like you to transition to changing your minds. So, I mean, from my perspective, I mean, I don't know what we're supposed to do.
There doesn't have to be anything either.
Right.
It's completely fine. It was nothing but an option. So.
Yep.
I think, just speaking for myself, we're looking at this from 2 different sides of the coin. You guys have done your studies already and you've come to your conclusions. We're in the infancy stage of ours, even though time is running out quickly. And we're not ready to give up.
Amen.
Well, going down the line, I would say I really appreciate you coming to these meetings, and I think it's imperative that we do keep communication
Amen.
open with Lincoln County
No
Healthcare.
question.
And I think it's great that you are here at our task force meetings, so I really appreciate that, and
I
it's
appreciate it
nice
very
to have
much
these
as well.
answers
Well,
right
I was
on
gonna
hand
ask
here.
the question, I mean, because we would take any advice, really, that you wanted to give us. If you want us here, great. If you don't, that's okay too, so.
I think it comes in handy very often to have you be able to answer our questions right away and not have to put them up on the wall. So that's great help to us. Thank you.
I have to say, Stacy, I do kind of feel like you're being put on the spot because you're the only one that's really here week to week to week from your organization. Is Mr. Donovan never going to take me up on my invitation?
Well, as I said in an email today, there are 3 different meetings going on for Lincoln County Healthcare tonight. This one plus a medical staff, plus 2 medical staff meetings. So we have to decide who's going to come and who's going to do what. And I have volunteered to do this. This is my community. It's the community that I live in. I feel very strongly about this, and so I said that that's where I want to be. If you guys want to change it up, I can certainly make the suggestion, but, you know.
No,
It's a pleasure
that
having
wasn't
you
what I
here.
was trying to say. I just feel that when the heat comes down on Lincoln County Health,
So-
you're the one absorbing all of it.
That's okay, I can take it. Well, so far.
Tom?
I have a question. We just heard from the Booth Bay Regional Ambulance Service. By the way, it's the first number that I've heard at these meetings, $300,000 plus, somewhere north of $300,000 is the economic impact of this change. But obviously, anybody that studied it and came up with a conclusion would have made an estimate of what that was. And right now, the only people who have such a completed study is Lincoln County Healthcare Service. So I'd like to ask Stacy what their number was for how much additional cost the peninsula would have to pay for its ambulance service.
Well, so I can't give you the breakout of that specifically, but I can tell you that in our planning process, they tell me I talk with my hands, so I get.
No, we're French, you can talk with your hands.
I can, okay, good. What we did do in our planning process is estimate what we thought it was going to cost during the transition for Lincoln County Healthcare to help, for instance, Blue Bay Region Ambulance. What was it going to cost as we got ready to transition employees? What was it going to cost from a facility standpoint? So we have a number in financial statements for fiscal year, I'll get my fiscal years messed up, 2013, in order to make this transition. And I would say this is the first time that Lincoln County has had a substantial number from Scott. We have been waiting, and we know that there would be, what we knew was there would be an operational number, an equipment number, and a training number. And so we've been waiting for those numbers. Last week it was about 200.
Actually,
Right?
no, the first meeting I had with Cindy Levin, I gave that number
The 200?
to her. The 300.
The 300?
Yeah.
Okay, well, so first time I heard it. Anyway, so there is money that we have budgeted to make this transition. I can't tell you exactly how much we have in each
So you
category.
know something that the regional ambulance service doesn't know, which is.
No, that's not true, because I think what we have said to Braz is we are committed to helping them with the transition. The financial cost of this during the transition, we are committed to that. And we're working with them to refine that, to help with training, to help with equipment, to help with their budgetary, operational budgetary issues. So,
Entirely?
I don't know the answer to that, right? It depends on how the numbers shake out. We're gonna meet, that's one of the things that we're committed to doing, is meeting with the ambulance service monthly or according to whatever schedule they've designed and come up with, yes, we agree that this is the number, yes, this is what we're gonna do.
But to
So-
follow up with their
I-
question, they're saying that you guys must have had a number in mind of what it's gonna cost the town once the ambulance hospital's gone.
Every year.
Guys, one at a time,
For
one at a
every
time.
year, right? So you guys must have had a number, or you didn't need to know because you're not paying it?
No, we have a number, there's a number in the budget for all kinds of
For just the
things.
transition, or
Not-
did you estimate after the transition?
We have estimated for the transition. at this point, we've estimated for the transition. So as an organization, you go through your budget each and every year. Brad's supposed to do the same thing. So we would look as we go out into 2014, 2015.
So could we ask what the number is
I
that you
don't know what the
budgeted?
number is, honestly.
In defense of the Booth Bay Region Ambulance Service, I know that my budget process takes me 2 months. Just to come up with my budget that I'm gonna present to the selectmen that are probably gonna pick it over for 2 more months. And that's with a lot of known commodities and variables that I can predict. I think we just threw a million variables at Booth Bay Region Ambulance Service. And to come up with even a close number in 2 months, my hat's off.
Amen.
Marie, did you have a question?
I wanted to make a statement for Dr. Foray, with all the business that will be going miles from the peninsula, he damn well can give some money to our ambulance crew.
Amen.
Just for clarity, the transition team, so the task force is not going to take an active role in that. But I would still say if anybody's interested in volunteering to help with the transition team, let Peggy know so we can get those people to Lincoln County Healthcare so that they can use all the assets that we have. And then the other thing is, we didn't touch on this when we were on the ambulance service. We're trying to figure out what our role is to help the ambulance service. I know that you guys are the best minds when it comes to emergency medical services, and we don't know what our role is. So if you think of something where you need grunt work, let us know so we can find people to help you.
Amen.
Okay. Next under reports, Lincoln County Regional Planning Economic Impact Study. Stuart.
Ongoing, I just came from that executive board meeting, and getting the input from the other towns, we realized that there's a lot of impact here on Newcastle and Damariscotta. Talked to Dick McLean, who was Damariscotta selectman for some time. They have issues with ambulances getting down through downtown Damariscotta, and sometimes they go down through the municipal parking lot. So they've got they're looking at what kind of activities they'll need to do to divert some of that traffic in case of emergencies. We've talked to Peter Coughlin at MDOT about the River Road. That's going to be a 3-town initiative between Booth Bay, Edgecombe, and Newcastle to reclassify that road as Route 215 and get the needed upgrades we need to handle the ambulance service out there. There's a lot of other impact here, economic as well, in these other communities that this is going. It's not just this peninsula now. So Damariscotta is concerned about the increased impact on around their town too.
Of course they are. Of course they are.
They're actually putting in a component in their comprehensive plan to deal with healthcare and the strains that this closure is going to do to their municipality. So, yeah, they very much want to come down here next month, and they meet on the 17th. And they'd love to have their meeting right here, get as many people in there as possible. But the economic studies are going forward. We've done a lot of work there. We've got a lot more to go. We're querying it, but we've gone to Lincoln County Healthcare and asked them for some of it's privileged because we're looking at income numbers, and we obviously can't give out specific, title and pay rates and stuff like that. But in aggregate, we can show, what kind of, that income impact is going to be on this area. We're trying to get an idea of where those positions are going to end up, whether they're going to be staying in Damariscotta or moving outside of this area altogether. And also we're trying to find out from the different businesses so what kind of impact it's going to be around this town and what Booth Bay is coming up on that side of it. So plus we're not privy obviously yet to the GRAS information, but of course I think that's going to play something in our figures too. So
Reclassifying River Road and
Yeah.
You didn't get it in the biennial plan for upgrade. That's gonna be
Yes.
challenging.
We're into the next budget cycle, so we're into 1450. So, 12, 13's done. So anything we do now is gonna be 1450. So,
And that's under the best of circumstances.
that's under the best, so yes.
That's even if you get into the biennial plan.
We can reclassify that road sooner. But the fact is, the budgets now are already set in stone for the MDOT stuff, so we're looking at 14 before anything is done.
Peggy?
Stuart, can we channel to you questions about property values? There are rumors going around, and there's no way for us to check them, but I'm just hoping that it's your committee we can channel this kind of thing to, that there were 6, was the number,
Yeah.
6 offers on homes on Southport that were withdrawn when the news of the hospital turmoil came about.
Yeah.
We don't have any way to check that, but indeed if people are not going to go through with buying property, it affects all of those who are property owners.
Well, I could give you an anecdotal situation with that. My mother, when passed away, her home came up for sale. It recently sold, and the people that have moved into it, my new neighbors, have come to me and go, what happened? One of the reasons we moved here was because of this hospital. And pointed at me and said, and you better save it. And I went, thank you very much. So, I mean, that's anecdotal. I mean, that's just, but that is somebody who came here. Part of their decision, that this is going to be a second home for them. But one of the reasons they bought here was because this hospital was here. And now they're like,
May I ask the data committee to look into other communities that have lost hospitals to see what impact that has had on property values?
Perry,
Official request?
to answer your question though, not only being on the RPC, I'm also a certified main assessor. And we'll look into that too, because all that infrastructure stuff does have a value, inherent in your property. So yes, we'll look at that too.
Thank you.
I have also heard that there's some number of people who have left or are leaving St. Andrews Village because of this.
Yeah, most of them have called me on their way out. Yeah, I've heard it as well.
Not yet.
Jane?
Well, I was just thinking about the 50 jobs that we lost. Possibly those families going to relocate. And there are more homes. I mean,
I've had a couple
that's
phone
a
calls
big
from
thing.
those folks too.
Yeah, it's a big
You know?
challenge in our community as well.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
Tom?
I'd like to ask the same question again of Stacy. Obviously, Lincoln County Healthcare must have considered all of the economic implications of closing the emergency room at St. Andrews. So they must have a number somewhere. Either they have a number, or they didn't think of it.
Or they don't care.
Or they don't care, because it's not in their budget. All of the above.
Well, I would not say that we don't care. I would say that as we talk to the task force, we are committed to healthcare services in this community. It is true that we intend to close the emergency department at night. All of the data that we have, you have the information, shows that we will still be providing services for 80-something% of the people that we have historically taken care of. For the remainder of those people, we have a top-notch ambulance service that will be able to transport effectively with top-notch medical control. They are the same physicians who are treating you in the emergency department today. They will be in the Miles Memorial Hospital emergency department as medical control, and you will be able to get the same services. We are also committed to the urgent care facility. We are committed to primary care services. They have to be used.
Well, for how long? I mean, this was
As long as they are
when the numbers are
used.
down, when the numbers are down, will that be gone?
Yes, as a matter of fact, it will. So as far as economic development goes, yes, we did consider it. We look at this on a county-wide basis, and we are concerned about the healthcare here in this community. Well,
The numbers are down because you kept moving everything to Miles.
All right, guys.
actually, it's not true. So
It is true, you took our operating
So
room.
can I explain? Here. So, let's talk about surgery. For the past 3 years, you have had more general surgery coverage in this community than you have had for years. You had 2 general surgeons here. 2. Ask me how many cases they have done. They were doing less than 7 cases a week. That's not even a full day in the operating room. But you had 2 surgeons. We brought 2 surgeons here. You had Dr. Miller, who never changed his schedule, and we added Matt Zadrowski. 2 days a week, plus a surgical day. And they were not busy. It isn't because we didn't provide services. Let's talk about the emergency department. The physicians that you have in this emergency department are board-certified, residency-trained emergency department physicians. A strong complement of physicians. These physicians came from Maine Medical Center. They came from Southern Maine Medical Center. I'm sorry to tell you, but we are very fortunate to have these physicians in our community.
They're good.
Very good.
Are we gonna still have
You're
them?
going to still have them in the urgent care facility.
Really?
You will have them. Wait, and to your question, Jane, we will have these services if they are used. They are not being used. I wish that they were, but they're not being used. Surgery, not being used.
It isn't here anymore. You took
You
it.
can't sustain, do you think that we can keep, whether clinically, whether they're gonna be satisfied clinically, to sit and not see patients all day? I can't do that. I can't do that to them. We can't do it here in our community. And yes, it's unfortunate, but the base at Miles is bigger. I'm sorry that it's 18 miles away. They're busier, but they're 18 miles away. If we had the population, or if we had the business, we would have kept those surgeons here. You can talk to Garth Miller about it. He's been here for how many years? He's been here forever. He made the decision to move the operating room. He was one of the major people to make the decision that it was time. So we want to keep services in this community, but you have to use them. So,
With all the studies that-
sorry for the preaching.
With all the studies that Lincoln-
Cancellations on Southport if you conflict reduce.
Well, sorry?
You haven't answered the question.
Which
is,
question?
What is, the original question I asked was, what is the number that Lincoln County Healthcare used as the economic implications of things like cancellation of house sales on Southport, reduction of...
I'm not sure that we have a number for that, quite frankly.
I'd be willing to bet that you don't.
Probably we don't.
With the studies that Lincoln County Healthcare has done, which are, there's some thorough studies over there.
Right.
There must have been a theory on why volume is down. What is Lincoln County Healthcare's theory on why volume is down?
There are 6,000 people in this community. There are 6,000 people. That is not enough to sustain an emergency department. And there are so many people. So I had a conversation with one of the members in this community last week, and I was talking to him after the meeting, and he said, we've got to keep the emergency department, Stacy, and I explained all of that. And then he told me that he fell and hurt his elbow and went to his doctor. And so I asked him, where was that? It was at Parkview. If you're going to go out of town for your services, I can't sustain them here. Nancy? Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Dr. Oliver?
Sorry.
As far as the surgical services go, what were those 7 cases a week?
Colonoscopies.
Okay.
Endoscopy, primarily speaking.
Okay.
You can't, because in a critical access hospital, you cannot do emergency service.
No, I'm not asking that.
So if you come
I
in
am
with an
talking
appendix,
about
you can't do it.
things like hernia repairs,
Yeah.
lap choles,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. Why were they not being done? Was it perhaps because St. Andrews didn't have any acute care beds in case there was a complication?
I'm not
There
sure.
can always be
I'm not
a
sure.
reaction to anesthesia, even for, say, a knee arthroscopy.
Nancy, you're getting way ahead of me from a clinical standpoint. What
Well, no,
I
I think they should have analyzed why perhaps the cases were not being done here.
Well, I'm sure if you talk to Dr. Miller, who is the chief surgeon here, he could answer those questions for you.
Perhaps you could also answer why Dr. Katz stopped doing surgery here.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Katz, what I know about Dr. Katz is that Dr. Katz has separated from his group in Midcoast, and he had a lot of stuff going on, so he stopped coming here. And his response to us was, let me get my shop in order, let me figure out what's going on, and then,
Well,
So we
there was
haven't heard
also
from Dr.
something to do with an orthopedist being sent down for Miles
Yes, so
on
let's-
Wednesday.
Sure,
The
so
day
do-
Dr. Katz was
Sure, do you want to
overseeing
talk
me.
about that? So we tried to provide orthopedic services in this community. So you had Dr. Katz coming here.
Yes.
Where is he from?
Brunswick.
Midcoast.
Yes.
Right. So Dr. Katz would see patients down here, he'd do a few cases, and then take other
Four or
cases.
five a day.
A few.
Quite a
take-
few.
said
quite a few.
4 or
take-
5 a day.
Take the rest back to Midcoast.
Not if you could help it.
I'm sorry to tell you, but that's the case. And so what we
Sorry,
said was
it's not. That's not
orthopedic,
the
so we said orthopedic cases should be done in this community. That, right? They should be done in this community. So we provided resources. We brought an orthopedic surgeon here.
On the same day Dr. Katz did his surgeries.
Nancy, what does it matter whether we brought him, so surgeons have.
If you want to expand services, bring them down on a different day and give people a choice.
So you do know about, OR schedules and office schedules and things like
And if
that?
the OR is
So-
being so terribly underutilized, there shouldn't have been a problem getting 2 orthopods in.
Well, so we could probably talk about that, but we did try to bring orthopedic services here. They were not used. So my plea to all of you is use the services. We want to keep them here.
Stacy, really, with all sincerity, I listened to the Floria tape and this board's, request. And he said, hindsight, we probably should have, we botched the communication. In hindsight, we should have come here. We should, but you don't go to the newspaper and tell them your family. And you don't do this and tell them, financial trouble. Well, why not?
Well, I think we've learned from that, Jane, is what I would tell you. But we should be telling you everything that is going on.
Then everybody would have had a choice.
Right.
Maybe they would have switched their doctors. Maybe they would have done their surgery here. This isn't rocket science. It's just something that's pulled right out from underneath us without us
I
knowing,
agree.
and there's no way to back it.
I wholeheartedly agree. I do. I wish that we had communicated differently. I really do. So.
I want to get one thing out, folks. If we're successful in our venture to maintain St. Andrews,
People have to.
We have to be sick here.
well, mostly, you've got to understand that if there's going to be any hope at all, you've got to use it. You can't drive by it, you can't, and I don't know if these people had done a better job of putting that out there, of actually advertising and encouraging people. It could have made a difference. I don't know, but I do know that whatever happens, if you want St. Andrews to stay, you better use it. And I mean regularly. If you need minor stuff done, don't go somewhere else. Do it. Well, I know you're going to have to now. But anyway, I'm just putting that out for future reference.
Bruce, then Pam, then the lady in the back.
To Chuck and board, to me, it's pretty clear that Lincoln County Healthcare and Maine Health did not have a mindset to advertise, as Smith is saying, come to St. Andrews. I think the mindset was, we are going to close St. Andrews.
Right.
As a part of efficiency. I wasn't there.
It certainly
I don't know,
seems
but
that
that's
way.
what it appears to me.
It certainly seems that way.
So it's a completely different mindset, and I believe that the public experienced it, felt it, and, withdrew its allegiance, if you will.
I think in a lot of ways, people in this region took St. Andrews for granted.
Yeah.
It was there, it had always been there, it was always going to be there. And it's okay if today I go somewhere else to, get something, it's not a big deal, the hospital's still there. When I need it, it'll be there. Well, now all of a sudden, we're realizing that's a different situation.
Just a couple comments in regard to what Stacy said about population. The population of the 4 communities represented on the task force is the year-round. In the 2010 census is more like 6,700. That's another 10% above what she's said. And then year-round, the population,
Holy
summertime.
cow. I mean, yeah.
I talked to Scott at the ambulance service today, and
Off the chart.
they were prepared, they are prepared, or in the old days of when the nuclear plant was in operation, they were prepared to deal with about 21,000 people in the summertime, and that's probably a conservative number. It's probably more like 24, 25. 21,000 people in the summertime, that's probably 4 months of the year. So our population figures don't take 6,000 as the number. The number is a bigger number than that. We
No
don't
question.
know exactly what that mix is. We're an older population. We may have, much higher needs than any similar. We're the oldest county and the oldest state in the country. There are also, in addition, 1,400 hotel rooms in our area, which also impose a
Absolutely.
potential need
Absolutely.
on an emergency room. So I do believe that if there had been a mindset that we can make this work, that they could have come to a different conclusion, but that was not part of their strategic plan. Having said that, I'd like to ask Stacy a question. Twice in Dr. Foray's presentation, he said that if you can show us that we're wrong, we will reconsider. He said that twice. Is that the position of Lincoln County Healthcare?
I think so. I think that's what we told the
Okay, so let me be clear. What he meant was that if we can show that the numbers would support an emergency room here, along with the critical care infrastructure that would go around it, that you would reconsider the decisions that you've made to close. Is that the position of Lincoln County Healthcare?
I'd answer that question very carefully.
Yeah, I'm not, honestly. Bruce-
Dr. Foray said it twice in his
Well, if Dr. Foray said
presentation.
it, we generally listen to Dr. Foray, so.
I'd like if we
well,
could.
It's not
Bruce,
exactly what he said.
It's not exactly what he said?
not
I haven't
exactly what he
listened,
said.
I haven't listened to the.
He said if he has new information.
Well, that's what we're talking about, new information.
So I think that what we told the task force was that let me back up and just make one comment to what you said. I do not think this was a grand plan, okay? I think we
You didn't back into it by accident.
Well, I do think what we did was advertise, add resources, and did all that we could in order to, for lack of a better word, drum up business for what was happening here at St. Andrews from a healthcare perspective. Now, you probably could say we could have done more perhaps, but with respect to the decisions that have been made, we went through a process. We believe it was a carefully analyzed process. We believe we had help. We believe we have told you that it is financial, it is clinical, it has to do with the changes that are happening in healthcare, it has to do with changes in reimbursement, and when you bring all of that stuff together, it brought us to these recommendations.
And
If you come up with something that we didn't think of, or there is new information brought to bear, I'm sure we will listen to it. I'm not gonna make a statement that says we're gonna reverse our decision, because I think what we have said to the task force was, we are not prepared to reverse that decision, and we are not prepared to delay the implementation.
Okay, but everything you laid out there, I caught, I think, 5 different
Right.
variables in that equation.
Yep.
If we were able to adjust any of those variables, you're saying that Lincoln County Healthcare would revisit this issue?
I don't know, Stuart, quite frankly. I mean, I know that the.
Because there's a couple of big variables there that may change.
Perhaps. What I'm saying is, when you put all of that together and you look at the reports, that's how we made the recommendations, and that's what was voted upon.
Could I
If there
just,
is new information, we will listen to it. I'm not saying one way, I can't commit. First of all, I don't have that power. We would have to ask the board. But I do think that Lincoln County Healthcare told the task force, we would listen. And we're happy to do that. And we're happy to educate.
if I might just to amplify the point of view that I have, and I think a number of us in this room have, is that the perspective I have is that there are communities as small as 2,000 that support a hospital with an emergency room in this country. We're not 2,000, we're 6,000 plus some larger number.
Well, Bruce.
So I just want to say that if Lincoln County Healthcare came to the conclusion that they couldn't sustain an emergency room and a small critical access hospital here, they came to a conclusion that was different from a lot of communities in Maine and around the country that do support these kinds of hospitals, and I think we can do it.
So,
And that's what we're about.
So Bruce, in reference to your point, if you look through our information, you will see that we did look at other community critical access hospitals all over the country. We have looked at that stuff.
I'd be glad to see your analysis.
So
If you
we'll
have,
talk-
is that analysis available to
Yeah,
us?
it's in the Navigant reports.
Okay,
So-
and-
So, you know, so,
Keep it moving. Pam?
No, I just wanted to say, I know you keep mentioning, we're down to 6,000 people and it won't sustain. How many people were here 10 years ago? How many people were here 20 years ago? It wasn't more.
no, but the emergency department visits were more. If you look in the data, you will see that over the past, what was it, 10 years that we showed you guys, over the past 10 years, they've declined 20%. That's a significant drop in volume in the emergency department. I wish it wasn't the same. I wish
I
it
just
was
don't
not
see
my
how we
recommendation. So,
how
Wendy?
we can keep the same numbers.
Wendy?
Thanks for recognizing me. My name's Wendy Wolf. I'm a physician and I'm a national and state health policy expert. And I just want to say a couple things in reference to the discussion. Number one, the stress that's happening here in this community is the stress that's being felt in rural communities throughout the state. Blue Hill Hospital right now, which is another critical access hospital, is offering a lot of their employees early retirement because they are so in the red that they don't know how they are going to be able to continue. Goodall Hospital down in Sanford was just acquired in the Maine Health System because they are running into financial difficulty as a small hospital. Franklin Memorial Hospital, which is a much bigger hospital than St. Andrews, and St. Joe's and the medium-sized hospils are generally running right now in the red, and they are all wondering how they are going to make the future occur with a financially viable business plan. Healthcare is changing a tremendous amount, and the payment for healthcare is going to be changing radically over the next couple of years. It is actually going to be more challenging to make a bottom line running an institution than it ever has been in the past. Because we are moving from paying for every procedure and every test to paying sort of what's called a package or global payment, and you have to make it work. And if you don't make it work with that global payment and get the right things done for people, you lose money. And hospitals that are on the edge right now, or those that are in the red, are very concerned that they are not going to make this transition. I spend every day looking at these issues, and this is just the way that it is, and this community is, frankly, I think, the first wave of a lot of community conversations that are going to be happening around the state. And I do think the leadership of Lincoln County Healthcare did a horrible job of engaging the community. All right? And I totally agree with that. I do think that I admire your capacity and enthusiasm to look at options. I think that's what communities do. I would be optimistic, it would be overly optimistic to think that you are going to arrive with a scenario, even if someone buys this hospital, that it is going to be financially viable over the long term. Now, one thing that I've heard two different variations on, listening to this, and as I read in the paper, is the great concern about losing the emergency room. And that seems to be where most people are really anxious, that we don't have the emergency services. There's much less talk about actually having the rest of the hospital around the emergency room. And I'll be candid, I'm a physician. I do not get surgery at St. Andrews Hospital. As a physician, even when it was offered, I know that having experience and volume and doing surgery every single day, because I used to do very complex procedures, leads to better competence and better outcomes. And that's just the truth, and that's proven in the data over and over and over again. Now, I think one thing that you should do is, as your task force is thinking of, can we save the hospital? Can we do this? I do think that there should be a lot of attention of saying, how do we on a parallel track try and work with the ambulance service and try and really plan for appropriate emergency services and do just as much work looking at that, trying to think, how do we preserve that? That is really where I've heard the most anxiety, is what's going to happen when we have an emergency occur and we don't have a local emergency room here. I just don't want to see people in this community put a lot of time and effort to go down a road where, candidly, the way the American healthcare system is going is going to be a very, very challenging scenario to think that this community can afford a hospital. And Bruce, with all due respect, most of the people that come here in the summer, they do not seek their health care here in Booth Bay Harbor. They go to Vero Beach, and that's where their doctor is in the winter, and that's where they have their procedures done. There are some people that will have health care here, but the great majority of people who are seasonal residents really see their primary doctor in other locations than Booth Bay Harbor. So I thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak, and I really appreciate all the community thinking going into this. But I just want to have a sense of realism where you know you're not the only community that is confronting this. You're the first tip of the spear right now, and other communities are going to be having these same conversations.
Thank you very much.
Can I talk to you before, Dr. White? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
First of all, thank you for coming and all, but are you affiliated in any way with Lincoln County?
No.
Or any of the hospitals in the region with that?
No.
So you're just a resident like us, and you have an opinion, is that right? I just want to make sure, it sounds
No,
iffy to me, and I want to get your angle of why you're presenting this side tonight.
I'm a pediatric cardiologist. I practiced for 20 years. I'm also in the Texas Medical Center, which is the largest medical center in the world. I'm a health policy expert. I worked in the Washington, D.C. Department of Health and Human Services on health policy for 3 years. And I run the Maine Health Access Foundation.
I believe your resume. I guess I'm welcoming you, but
so I don't work for any
the
hospital.
whole conversation. So I was curious of your involvement in our community.
No, I don't have any involvement in Lincoln Healthcare or any of the other hospitals. And I will say, personally, as someone that knows a lot about nonprofit operation, I'm frankly appalled that this group cannot get the list of the board of directors of Lincoln County Healthcare. And actually, I would think that would be a question you can ask the Attorney General, because the Attorney General provides the regulatory oversight of all nonprofits in the state of Maine. St. Andrews and Lincoln County Healthcare or Miles Memorial are nonprofit institutions, and frankly, in transparency, that ought to be publicly available. And Linda Conti is the person in the Attorney General's office who's in charge of consumer protection. And that would be a good question to ask her why that is not available.
Well, they have the board of directors, Wendy.
We do now. And thank you, Dr. Wolf. That was an interesting perspective.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
But I just gotta have to respond a little bit. Is that moral victories are kind of the lifeblood of Americans, and if this is a national a national trend, a state trend, and we bring a little bit of publicity to the fact that healthcare services cannot change in a community without engaging the community. I think that's a moral victory that people would be happy with.
Absolutely.
May I respond to that?
Yes.
It's up to you guys.
Please.
Let me just say that many of you in this room are familiar with Peggy Pinkham. Actually...
She did walk in. She's
here.
I had church meetings.
Oh, and Peggy can attest that in the day job that I do, we have invited Peggy, a few other former hospital and current hospital CEOs together to speak at our organization and try and help us think about how do we begin to engage people and communities in thinking about how we're going to provide rural health care moving into a very different future. And actually, the day we met was the day sort of the information about St. Andrews Borough. And I do think that you're right. This is a moral question of how do nonprofit hospitals serve people and engage them in planning the course of their own future. And I do think that that's a very positive benefit of this dialogue, because it was done very poorly, in fact, pretty non-existent. And that's really an anathema. People have to be part of the solution. And I think that this does stand as an example that other communities should use. I'm frankly not sure how much that word is getting out to those people that ought to be thinking about that. But I really congratulate you on trying to make this a very open process.
Peggy, then Tom, then Bruce.
Dr. Wolf, thank you. If I am wrong in what I've heard from the community, and maybe it's also how the hospital is set up. If we lose the emergency room, we lose the hospital designation.
Absolutely.
And so that's why it becomes our first priority. But I will also tell you that if you ask everybody who has used this hospital in this room, it's not just the emergency room, it's those beds.
Yes.
It's the rest of the hospital where my father-in-law had to spend 5 weeks and we got to see him every day for hours because he was moments away. My mother-in-law sat there for 9 weeks because she had to be in the hospital and she was moments away. And we could transport my father-in-law who couldn't get there on his own, and he could stay, we could take him home. It's the beds. But when we focus on what keeps the beds available, it's the emergency room. So that's, I think, a lot of our angst. We lose not only the emergency room, but we lose, and I never wanted to bring this up because it seems so sentimental instead of a reality. And I think that it's like we have 95% of the services that are still going to be there if this Lincoln County healthcare goes through, but in 5% of the building. And there isn't a plan that's been set forth for us that allows us to know we're going to be able to be with our loved ones in their getting well or in their final days. We won't have that anymore. And I think that is also of a concern. So It's not just the emergency room, Dr. Wolf. It is the entire hospital experience that allows us to be with the people we love.
We've had some experts from off the peninsula tell us that it's impossible with a population of only 6,000 or whatever the number is, to have a hospital on this peninsula. If Walter Bozell had listened to the experts from the National at the YMCA, there would be no YMCA on this peninsula.
Right.
If this peninsula has supported the YMCA, the Botanical Gardens, and many other institutions, and it seems to me that there has been a fundamental error made by just about all of the outside experts who have underestimated the population of this peninsula.
Right.
That's a fundamental
No question.
economic fact that they have grossly overlooked, and they also have overlooked the reaction that the population would evidence once it was made clear that St. Andrews was going to go.
Couldn't agree more.
We pointed out the reaction before it happened. I mean, that was the message to Maine Health on the day that we had the opportunity to speak to Maine Health, is that we thought that the reaction to that the community would have is underestimated.
Bruce?
I just want to say I have the utmost confidence in Wendy and her views of the world. When we have legislative questions that relate to healthcare, she's often there, and she's the person that I listen to. So, and I listen to her now. But I think our efforts should not be mischaracterized. We are not probably going to be going after surgery here again or an acute care hospital. What we want is, I think, is the emergency room and a surround of services that make it be a small community hospital that is responsive to the needs of the people here and that is close by. We do not underestimate the difficulties. We know we're swimming against the national tide. A lot of us just read the article in a famous national magazine about turning hospitals into something like fast food chains with standardized services and doctors forced to use the lowest cost, to the lowest cost implements to fix your knee. All this to try to drive down costs and all the rest. We understand we're going against that grain, but I think my sense is that the people of this community want to look at this option to see if we can't keep it open. And that's what we're doing, and that's what we're going to do. Amen. So, yeah, we may be tilting against windmills, but we're gonna give it our best.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that we all understand where we're all coming from on this issue, and I think the majority of us in the room agree. But I think we could discuss this same topic all night. And
yep.
I hate to cut off the discussion on the topic, but we're closing in on the 2-hour mark, and I'd like to move forward with the agenda if I may. And I do want to thank everybody for their comments and concerns. Next under the reports is financial and fundraising.
So I added 3 things under reports that I'll just briefly touch and then get into financials if
okay.
That's okay. First thing, communication. First, I've taken my hat off to Peggy Powis and Freddie Luke, but John Pankowitz in his Google Groups has exploded into this thing that a lot of people are using. And today I started sending him digital copies of all the information that we have, because I think what he's doing is a really a noble effort to get information out there in the digital world. And thank you. He used the Google Groups, and if you have any questions, see John or ask me how to see John so you can start utilizing that.
Thank you.
Additionally, correspondence. As questions are getting out there, how do we get questions to Peggy so that they're in the queue? Questions can be sent to me, they can be sent to Peggy, they can be sent to the Google Groups, and they're all going to end up in the same place. So if you have any questions on how to get a hold of me, all of our information is on our website, townofboothbay.org, but also the Google Groups, and then Peggy's in here Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 2 to 4. Did I get it right? I'm looking for visual cues over there. Somebody had mentioned to me on the way in that it's disheartening to not know what the legal report is, and I can't get into the legal report here. But I did think of a way that I could mention something that people could hang on to. In probably about 2 or 3 weeks, we will have a product. And at that time, the product will be public. We can't disclose what our product is going to be until that point in time, but just hang on and trust that there are some cogs moving that we can't exactly talk about in public right now. And I can understand where the public would be like, everything I see is everything that's happening. We have been trying to be as transparent as possible, but there are some things that need to be kept private. Financials and fundraising. I put in the information in front of you. The fund that we set up at the town of Booth Bay is up to $5,780.35. $3,500 of that is accounted for in the first legal bill, which will be in the selectmen's warrant on Monday. So a total balance of $2,280.35. Did have a couple of discussions just recently about people that wanted to donate, and the only one that said that it was okay to announce publicly was the George McAvoy Foundation is going to donate some money, and I don't think we've received that yet. And a funder called yesterday or today, they're starting to blend together, is going to make a $1,000 donation within the next couple of days. So some money will start coming in. But that leads us to fundraising, which we need to have a discussion at the table about how fundraising is going. Has anybody taken the lead, or are we still looking for a fundraising leader?
I think Peggy said earlier, we are looking for some leadership for that work committee. Another question that she had asked was, do we set a minimum on how much we want to raise per week? And what I had said to her, I think at the bare least, we need to raise at least $1,000 a week, at the bare minimum. And I threw that out to you guys and wanted to know what you thought.
Val, you were going to say something?
Well, maybe before we think about what our minimum would be, without any leadership of the fundraising, some people have been meeting and moving forward with some action items, and I'll step up and say what those are. Actually, Peggy wrote a press release that will be going out this week, right?
One was sent, but there was not, we've got another one in the pipeline, but we're waiting for some indication. I think the volunteers are looking for leadership from the task force to say, okay, let's just say we need to be able to raise $1,000 a week just to show good faith. It may have to go up to $2,000 or $5,000, or we might have to ask somebody for $50,000. I wanted to rename everything the Legal Defense Fund, but we can't do that yet because there are other expenses. But I think the community would like to know if we are making ground. Are we going forward? And they will know that if we say, okay, we have to be able to show that we can raise $1,000 a week. And remember, if we somehow don't use it, it's going to the ambulance service, which we know we're going to have to then probably all get behind anyway. So I think $1,000 a week is a reasonable number. Maybe it's not, but you all know what we are anticipating spending, and we don't. So until we have a human being, if we could ask the task force for some leadership on an amount, it would be, I think, very good.
$3,500 bought us a handful of legal hours. So to put it in perspective, the $2,200 that we have left will only go so far.
So what are you going to do?
My gut instinct is you never want to limit yourself with the fundraising, and if people see that you're getting to $1,000 a week, they will step back for that week once you hit that mark. So I would say we need as much as you can give, as quickly as you can give it, and you have to trust us that we're going to use it in the responsible manner and put it towards what's going to be best for what this task force needs to do. And that would be my thought on it. I think that there are some things that people are doing already. We have some boxes out in the community that are open for collection, and somebody is taking care of keeping these boxes. We have a list of private associations that we are going to approach that might be interested in funding or giving funds to our cause. We also have the plea out to the community, which comes in the form of the press release and the big banner, which is in progress, that's going to go over Route 27. And also there is a plethora of people working on foam hearts and buttons and plywood hearts, and just educating the public that this is something that does need backing and financial backing. So when you see those visuals, you will perhaps think to reach into your pocket and donate to the town of Boothbay, which is where the checks need to go.
Right. So just to reiterate, once again, if you're going to donate money, the town of Boothbay can receive those funds. It's going into an account that the town of Boothbay has established. So if you're making a check out payable to the town of Boothbay, notate that it's for the St. Andrews Fund so that we know, and we'll put it into this account, which we're going to report every single week. Our information is on our website, townofboothbay.org, but if anybody's paying attention on Channel 7, P.O. Box 106, Booth Bay 04537. I've never worked for a more conservative selectman than Chuck Cunningham, so trust that the money will be used appropriately. Sorry, Chuck.
Yes, I am cheap.
And I do want to reiterate too that giving to this fund does not replace giving to the Boothbay Region Ambulance Fund, which, as we heard earlier, is in desperate need of $150,000 just to pay off what they've already bought, plus $300,000 plus a year. So I think that while it's grand that the leftover funds from our effort will go to the ambulance, that both need to be considered.
And I think the last thing I would say on the subject, guys, is we're all here, you're all here, we're fighting this fight. It can't just be lip service. It can't just be us railing against the inequity of it all. If we're gonna do this, we gotta step up and do it with our checkbooks and our effort. It's gotta be both. You have to be, if you really care about St. Andrews, this is a tangible way to show it. Give us some money to work with, give us something to fight with.
Question.
June?
On these props that Dale was mentioned, is there any way that when you have your meetings, you could have a supply of them, and maybe a few of us could take them and get them spread around?
They're around.
Yeah.
There's
I think
some
Freddie's
out
got
there.
a bunch in the back.
Right here. Yeah.
Okay.
They're here. All right, good.
That's good, so that people that want to help distribute these and get them out and buy them, you could get them here as well as
Amen.
out and about.
Yep.
Right on.
On the agenda for Monday's Board of Selectmen meeting, the Board of Selectmen of the town of Booth Bay will discuss whether they will take any public funds to put into the task force. And I'm not saying that they will, but they will entertain that idea. We've already received some feedback on that of people that are opposed to that. I think the selectmen definitely need your input on whether that's a wise decision. Please give them the support they need.
Dan, you had a quick comment?
Yeah. I wonder about the Chamber of Commerce. As you know, they're notable by their silence in this thing. And you know,
Flowers on the footbridge.
and flowers on the footbridge and stuff like that.
You know anybody, give them a call.
I will say, as a selectman, the most powerful thing that you can get is feedback from people. Sometimes you feel like you're just guessing or making a decision on your own, and so if people feel strongly about it, tell your selectmen, tell the Chamber of Commerce representatives, tell the town managers, tell the people in charge of associations who might donate money, tell the people who you know who run grant organizations or do fundraising in the town, because they need to hear that people are interested in this and that it's something that we really believe in. It's powerful that you're all here every week even, because we have a lot of meetings with no public at all, so.
Booth Bay Harbor does?
So, getting back to Peggy's point, do we want to give them a minimum on how much they want to raise a week, or just as much as the public wants to give?
I say the more the merrier.
Yeah.
Can we start with 1,000? I mean, just to see if we can do it?
Peggy, if 1,000 sounds good to you, we'll start with 1,000, but goodness, folks, don't stop there.
Don't worry.
Yep.
Chuck?
Okay.
Valerie spoke of the list of associations. My thought was like Squirrel Island Board of Overseers, there must be a Bayville Homeowners Association, those. I was not able to come up with all the contact names for those. Is there any members of those communities within our community that could tell us who to contact to ask their opinion as well as solicit their funds. It would be helpful.
Okay. They can get in touch with you or give the names to Peggy?
I think I'm headed out of town.
Okay, get the names to Peggy.
The town of Booth Bay passed a resolution that you can't leave town. Sorry, Freddie.
You tell my husband.
Oh, he can leave. You guys say.
We need to arrange to condemn her house.
If you camper, you'd have to condemn the stuff.
Do you have anything else on fundraising?
That's all I've got.
So you're going to move forward with the press release, Peggy?
Second press release, there's one that was released yesterday, so it might be up on the website now. And we have another one that's in the wings, in the pipeline, written by another volunteer, and we will release it as soon as we see the ones that we just released. So hopefully, if we can get some other writers, we will be more than happy to release something every week. We'll find some angle, so we can keep repeating and keeping it in front of the community's eye that indeed we do need money. I'm sorry,
If someone wanted to make posters, I'd take them all over the world.
there you go.
Where are you doing the releases?
We do need people
Where are
on
you doing the
Sundays to
releases?
stand on the corner.
Booth Bay Register, which ends up on their website,
Probably
and
look at
also on Thursdays.
Lincoln County News, too.
And Lincoln County News.
Okay. Anything else on that?
Old business.
All right. Old business, the Dr. Foray interview.
Homogenized, that was the word that popped out at me. There were so many questions that I would ask, and I thought one of us was going to do the interview, and that's why
I want to go on the record as stating that I'm very disappointed.
Yeah.
You certainly have the right to do what you want to do and go forward in the way you want. One of us should have been involved. We wanted to be involved. We made it clear we wanted to be involved. And I want everybody out there to know that that interview was done without our support.
There were a lot of questions that weren't asked.
Well, let's talk about, I mean, we did get the message after trying to reschedule it a couple of different times, and what we have heard loud and clear was our communication has not been very good. What we heard from the task force
But
was
this
you need to get the
exacerbated
information
it,
out.
Stacy. I thought we
Well-
talked about this on Tuesday, and
Perhaps it did, but
you
what
know,
we
it
said.
couldn't have waited till Friday.
We tried rescheduling it twice, right? And with all due respect, everybody has very busy schedules. And so we decided that we needed to get information.
I'm just saying, Stacy,
Had-
we had people available for Friday. That's all.
That was not offered to us, Stuart, quite
Well,
frankly.
when you called
Friday.
me, you asked me for that day, and I'm like,
Right.
I'm going to a client. Right
And then we asked for Thursday, and Friday was actually, I mean, Mark Corey had to work on Friday in the emergency department, so that was not possible for him. So I would agree that it would have been optimal for you guys to do. We're happy to do it again. We're happy to do any type of communication that you want. But we have been criticized for not getting information out. And so we took the opportunity to say, it's not a staged event. We're going to get the information out. We're happy to answer all kinds of questions. I think we have said to the task force, read our information, ask us questions. We will bring people in to talk to the community. And the response we heard last week was, well, you can't possibly have Dr. Foray up there by himself because, you know, you need somebody that he might sway opinion and you need somebody to counterpoint. All we're trying, you want our information, we're trying to give you our information. However that happens, we're good with that. So I'm sorry if you took offense, but we're gonna keep communicating and we have
Well,
to.
we will too, you know, but it put it in a different realm for us. So, and, you know, personally, I sat there and I watched the interview and I was sitting there, ask this, and nothing was being asked.
If we could, we asked for
There
the
were no
questions.
follow-ups.
We asked for the questions, we didn't get the questions.
But you had some questions, but we were under the understanding that because we had met with Lincoln County Healthcare, we're intimately involved in this day-to-day, that we could sit there, we wouldn't have to give you all of our questions, because Dr. Foray said he didn't want to see them. So we were thinking, okay, great, we'll be able to sit here and we'll be able to counterpunch and ask him certain questions, and lead-in questions and follow-ups that frankly weren't asked.
Well, let's do it again. There's nothing stopping us. Let's bring it on.
Do it when he comes to our phone.
If I'd like to say something, he also did say many times, Dr. Forrest said, I'm not on camera with you are, that he would be glad to talk to anybody, and it was originally scheduled to talk to Jim Teosis, which didn't happen, and we tried to reschedule the whole thing, and they just wanted something to happen. So
Yes,
I,
they
of
did.
course, volunteered to make something happen.
And something happened.
And with Tom Wooden volunteering to do it, we had somebody. It wasn't my choice, it wasn't anybody's first choice, but he did an okay job. And we're also trying to involve, and I'm not sure what's going to happen, to get Sue Mello involved in being an interviewer, because she's so knowledgeable and has been doing such great articles. And he mentioned that in his talk, that he's willing to do many more. So that, again, and I put on it, this was the first of a series, I hope. And I'm hoping to talk to other experts or other amazing experts that are already here that I hope to get on camera and to get interviewed. So again, I think it's just the first step to what we can do. And I understand the issues that you're saying.
And we appreciate very much what you did, and we're glad you took the time to do it. We're simply trying to put out so that people understand that interview, the way it went down, was not how we envisioned it. I think we ought to just leave it at that.
Well, I think we would also say it was not the way Lincoln County envisioned it going down.
No, it's the way you
either.
made it happen.
However, yes, I did, but, really? So, it did. However, Lincoln County also would have stood a risk after you, Smith, said on camera, it's really important
It is.
that you listen to him, and it's gonna happen tomorrow. So
Right.
suddenly.
And I told you without any equivocation that I would be glad to go on camera and tell him that the reason it didn't happen was our fault, not your fault.
And
I
we-
was more than prepared to do that.
That's not what I got in my voicemail message. And I saved my voicemail message, so we can certainly listen to that. But you're right, we made the decision to go forward because we thought it was important to tell the story. And it doesn't have to be the end of the story.
Understood.
It can continue
Not a
on.
problem. Let's finish this.
Okay, and I, I'll apologize for the fact that I was unavailable for that interview. I was pulled out of town at the last minute. And I just ask people to be, to understand that we have more going on than the St. Andrews project. We're still running the town of Booth Bay in the background. And then way in the background, I have a personal life. We weren't able to do that interview. I apologize for my role in that, but we definitely needed to address the Dr. Foray interview at this table.
All right. Moving on.
Would you like me to start working on another type of interview?
I think the five of us need to chat.
Okay.
Excuse me, can I say something?
Yes.
I'm Libby Dinsmore from East Booth Bay, and it doesn't matter what he says in that interview, because we don't trust them anymore. We're not gonna listen to them. I mean, they've already cooked their own goose.
Say about that?
Can I add one thing on the old business?
Go ahead, Jim.
Words of the interview.
We're moving on up here.
One thing that we've been postponing every single time I go to the agenda and I take the first agenda that we made, we haven't actually addressed the minutes. I was going to propose to the group that we take our collection of Channel 7 documented video and adopt those as the formal minutes, and we can make sure that those are available for you guys to review.
Excellent.
Rather than go back and recreate those minutes.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I'll make sure that happens.
New business. Recap the next meeting.
So I have, obviously, the minutes. We'll make sure that those are available for the task force so you can adopt them at the next date. The press release is going to go out. Is that right? You have one press release going out, and
It's
then
gone. One is gone and one is in the pipeline, so it will go through the approval process again. I hope it worked for all of you.
still looking for a fundraising leader. I know that there's a fundraising leader out there somewhere in Booth Bay.
Got a hand over here, hand up, just a quick.
Yes, ma'am.
I think it's really, really important that we keep an open mind and that we listen and we are not closing our ears to the information that is presented. Because when we start and react emotionally, we close our ears to the fact that are presented. And I think it's a shame if we talk about people who are really trying to give us information and we negate what they're saying with an emotional comment. I think we're doing this task force a disservice. We need to keep our minds open and listen and make decisions based on facts and not emotion.
No argument.
And you said that you wanted to do that from the very beginning. And tonight, it started to slip away.
But whose facts?
Yeah, I think that's the issue.
Information or disinformation?
Jim?
Representative McDonald, your next meeting again Monday?
We're going to meet Monday 4 to 5, and I think, Peggy, can I confirm that you'll come to our meeting and talk about critical access hospitals and what they...
It's an informational meeting for the folks to understand what is a critical access hospital, how is it licensed, what are the regulations. So I thought it was important to at least share and do an educational session.
So anybody's invited to come. We meet here. Is this whole room available then,
Let me
Jim?
just double check. I'll be in touch with you first thing tomorrow morning.
Here, unless you're here otherwise.
What time on Monday, Bruce?
Monday 4 to 5.
We'll have, I'll speak to Tom Taverner and see if he's available for the information request.
Okay.
Ambulance service, we meet one more time before they have their meeting with Lincoln County Health Care.
Okay.
And the economic impact study, I don't have any follow-up, but you guys are working on that, right?
Yeah.
I think I've covered everything. Anything I'm missing?
I don't think so. Did you miss anything? I hope not. No, I hope not.
Good.
All right. Since that's it, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Thank you all for coming out tonight.
Thank you for all your